The Committee on Homeland Security, Subcommittee on Border and Maritime Security will come to order. Subcommittee is meeting today to examine policies that impact the Department's ability to secure the border. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. After chairing the subcommittee over the past 2.5 years, leading many hearings, visiting different regions of the southern border, and spending time at the border in my state with ranchers, Homeland Security Secretary Nielsen, Border Patrol agents, and local law enforcement, I'm confident when I say that border security is national security. We continue to see growing levels of illegal drugs, dangerous gang and transnational criminal organization activity, as well as illegal immigration flow across our southern border. This not only poses a threat to our communities and families, but also our rule of law. When our borders are not respected, our sovereignty is not respected. That's why we need a multifaceted approach to border security that the Department continues to reiterate, including a combination of border wall, technology, access, and personnel using intelligence-driven operations to detect and intercept the illegal flow. Today, our focus is on personnel and the capabilities at the border. Staffing shortages at both the ports of entry and in Border Patrol are exacerbated by both a hiring process that takes far too long and retention challenges that have persisted for years with no signs of abatement. CBP is critically understaffed and remains well below its congressionally mandated staffing levels by more than 1,000 CBP officers and 1,900 Border Patrol agents. Combined with the growing crisis along the southwest border, this shortage has put our nation's security at risk. In April, President Trump announced the deployment of the National Guard to help secure the southwest border, a decision I wholeheartedly support. Such a deployment is not a new concept. U.S. Customs and Border Protection and the National Guard have a long-standing successful working relationship due to cooperation on the counter-drug task forces as well as through past operational deployments to the border. The number of illegal border crossings leading up to April's announcement shows an urgent need to address the ongoing situation. We witnessed a 207% increase from March 2017 compared to March 2018, and a 244% increase from April 2017 to April 2018. Over the last 3 months, National Guardsmen and women have been operating along the border to help execute logistical and administrative support, operate sensor and imaging detection system, provide mobile communications, augment border-related intelligence analysis efforts, build and install border security infrastructure, and many other functions. The National Guard deployment allows the opportunity to put badges back on the border so they can enforce the law and interdict and apprehend those who are illegally crossing. The support can also help CBP process people and goods faster at our ports of entry, freeing up our highly skilled officers to conduct law enforcement interviews and inspections instead of handling logistical and administrative duties. Governor Doug Ducey in my home state of Arizona was one of the first governors to answer the President's call, and today, 657 Arizona personnel support Operation Guardian Support. However, these operations are not just the responsibility of the 4 southwest border states. This is a national mission, and it is appropriate that everyone pitch in to reinforce our defense of the homeland. I'm happy to see National Guard units from across the country have contributed by sending helicopters, personnel, and other resources to support this important mission. For decades, the Department of Defense has been a key partner in supporting CBP's border security efforts. The brave men and women of DHS have worked tirelessly alongside their DoD counterparts in the name of defending our homeland, and I want to thank all of you for your service. The service is not lost on us. The DoD has, and I suspect will continue to play an important role in helping us secure the border in the future. For that reason, we need to make sure they have certainty about funding and even further, take a long, hard look at their continued assistance with homeland defense activities. Though the National Guard helps alleviate the staffing shortages at the border, we cannot continue to surge our citizen soldiers and their resources for just brief periods of time and recall them shortly after, expect whatever gains are made won't deteriorate once the assets return back home. We need to have a post-surge plan and sustained operations to increase situational awareness and gain operational control of the border. In addition to being the chair of this subcommittee, I am one of 9 members of Congress who represent a border district. My constituents have waited too long for Washington, D.C. to provide all the resources, strategy, manpower required to secure the border and stop the cartel activity in our communities. Today we're here to examine the deployment of the National Guard personnel to the southwest border, their ability to enhance CBP operations in Texas and Arizona specifically, the duties of the National Guard troops, and coordination efforts between DHS and DoD. Basically, we want to know how's it going, how's the mission happening, and what else can we do to support the mission? What successes have you had, and what barriers remain? I'd like to thank all the witnesses for their time. I look forward to hearing your testimony. With that, I yield to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Vela, for any statement he would like to give.
Thank you, Chairwoman McSally, for holding this hearing. Today, we will discuss the most recent National Guard deployment to our southern border. As I stated on the day this deployment was announced, this is a horrendous idea. As with many of this administration's justifications for misguided border security actions, context and strategy are completely lacking. The southern border is not a lawless war zone, and what chaos we have seen has been created by this administration. My district is in the Border Patrol's Rio Grande Valley, one of the higher traffic sectors along the southern border. This sector has the second largest number of Border Patrol agents assigned to it, only behind Tucson. We also have a large contingent of Texas Department of Public Safety personnel assisting the Border Patrol, and I know that our local law enforcement officials are engaged in keeping our community secure along this stretch of the border. In addition, the Texas National Guard has an ongoing border security mission ever since former Governor Rick Perry deployed 1,000 guardsmen to the Texas-Mexico border in 2014. To say that the border is lawless is a lie. Deploying National Guard personnel to the southern border is not new, but the circumstances for this deployment are unusual. Facts and context matter despite the administration's repeated attempts to frame them in a way that justifies its misguided and inhumane policies. As you can see in this graph, no graph. There you go. There were 70% fewer apprehensions in March 2018, a month before President Trump's order, than in the month before President Bush's 2006 mobilization. In 2006, U.S. Customs and Border Protection had 50% fewer Border Patrol agents on board than we have today, and the average agent apprehended approximately 97 people per year. For context, in 2017, the average Border Patrol agent apprehended less than 20 people per year across all northern and southern border sectors. To say that immigrants are overrunning our border is a lie. The purposes for the prior two deployments were also different than the one launched earlier this year. During Operation Jumpstart, the Bush administration was in the midst of hiring and training thousands more Border Patrol agents, and once staffing levels increased by 40%, the operation ended in 2008. Operation Phalanx was launched in 2010 when cartel violence on the Mexican side was rising and the threat of spillover violence was a serious concern. Today, apprehension levels are at the lowest levels we have seen since the early 1970s, and the threat of border violence is less. The purposes for this new deployment are purely reactionary and political. Let's remember that in early April, the President was reacting impulsively to backlash from the far right about the spending bill he had just signed that had less than the $25 billion he wanted for his boondoggle border wall. DHS had also just reported that apprehension levels were rising, as they typically do in the early spring months. Keep in mind that more than one-third of apprehensions along the southwest border in the first 5 months of fiscal year 2018 were of unaccompanied children and families. We know that these individuals often seek out Border Patrol agents in order to request asylum or other humanitarian aid. The White House and the rest of the administration spun itself up into a frenzy over the so-called caravan, and the President announced his intention to militarize our border. DHS and DOD then had to scramble to pull together this deployment in the following weeks. Around the same time, the administration began to criminally charge apprehended adults, separate families without a thought to reunification, and to obstruct people legally seeking asylum at our ports of entry. The reasons for this new National Guard deployment and harsh immigration policies had to be overblown, and the chaos that the administration was claiming as justification was fabricated. Clearly, mobilizing the National Guard to support CBP operations can be done with a clear purpose and strategy. This does not seem to be the case this time around. I thank our witnesses for joining us today, but I fear that your time and resources are being misspent on a deployment that may be nothing more than political show. Nonetheless, I thank you for joining us this afternoon, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. We're pleased to have three distinguished witnesses before us today. Chief Rodolfo Karish is the Chief Patrol Agent for Tucson Sector and Commander of the Joint Task Force West, Arizona. In this position, Chief Karish leads more than 3,900 agents and crucial support staff in one of the busiest Border Patrol sectors in the nation. Excuse me, and that's where I represent. Chief Karish brings more than 33 years of law enforcement experience to the Tucson sector. Prior to joining Border Patrol in 1986, he served with the El Paso, Texas Police Department starting in 1983. Major General John Nichols was reappointed to be the Adjutant General of Texas on March 17, 2016, where he commands almost 25,000 soldiers and airmen of the Texas Military Department. General Nichols reports to the Texas Governor regarding the Texas Army National Guard, Texas Air National Guard, and the Texas State Guard. He received his Bachelor of Science in Aeronautical Engineering for the U.S. Air Force Academy and graduated from U.S. Air Force Squadron Officer School, Air Command and Staff College, Air War College, and the Fighter Weapons Instructor School. Major General Michael McGuire is the Adjutant General to Arizona and the Director of the Arizona Department of Emergency and Military Affairs. In this role, General McGuire is responsible for managing Arizona's Army and Air National Guard joint programs, along with the Division of Emergency Management. He's in command of 8,000 members, ranging from federal military and civilian personnel to state employees. General McGuire was commissioned in the U.S. Air Force, at the U.S. Air Force Academy. Oh, we got 3 Academy grads in the room. We're in 1987. The chair now recognizes Chief Carish for 5 minutes to testify.
Thank you. Chairwoman McSally, Ranking Member Villa, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today on behalf of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. I have served as a Border Patrol agent for more than 30 years and am honored to currently serve as the Chief Patrol Agent for Tucson sector. It is one of the busiest in the nation. In my experience on the front lines, I have seen the threat that an unsecured border presents to our country and to its people. I have seen smuggling and trafficking organizations with zero regard for human life. I have seen the flood of narcotics coming across our border, and I have seen the dangerous criminals attempting to infiltrate our communities. Furthermore, I have seen what works to secure our borders, and I have seen what does not. And I know that having the support of committed and dedicated National Guardsmen gives our agents much-needed help while we work to increase our staffing in CBP. There is more to border security than conducting patrols and inspections. Many important jobs are behind the scenes. For example, there are surveillance systems to monitor, fences to repair, vegetation to clear, and intelligence reports to analyze, to name just a few. All of these jobs are important to operational control of the border, but our officers and agents cannot simultaneously carry out these jobs and our law enforcement mission. That is the purpose of Operation Guardian Support, to provide additional personnel and support capacity so more of our agents can do important frontline work we need to protect our nation. On April 4th, 2018, President Trump called on the Department of Defense to expand their existing support of CBP's border security mission. This has benefited CBP significantly. Under Title 32, National Guard forces are supporting DHS pursuant to the order of the President. In Title 32 status, National Guard forces are ordered to duty by their respective state governors and remain under the command and control of the state governors. I would personally like to thank the governors who have deployed National Guard personnel in support of this operation and our border security mission. And I would also like to thank the adjutant generals for their continued coordination and cooperation with CBP. Solutions like Operation Guardian Support are not new. The Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security have long enjoyed a cooperative partnership, and CBP's relationship with the National Guard in particular is several decades long. National Guard personnel support our Border Patrol Office, the Office of Field Operations, and our Air and Marine Operations components. Their assistance increases our ability to detect, deter, and respond to threats of all kinds, including drugs, weapons, illegal aliens, and possible terrorists, all while helping CBP facilitate legitimate trade and travel. Since Operation Guardian Support began in April, the National Guard has contributed to thousands of apprehensions, the seizure of thousands of pounds of dangerous drugs, and multiple resources. To be clear, in Operation Guardian Support, National Guard personnel do not conduct law enforcement activities and do not have direct contact with migrants. However, their support accelerates improvements to border security while CBP hires, trains, and equips additional personnel. For example, in my home sector of Tucson, National Guard personnel assigned to the Ajo Border Patrol Station helped vehicle mechanics complete an inspection of the station's fleet. During the inspection, the National Guard mechanics identified and repaired more than 80 vehicles with suspensions issues that could have led to significant safety hazards for the Border Patrol agents patrolling in isolated areas. Without the National Guard, it would have taken weeks to repair that many vehicles. With the Guard's help, however, the inspection and repairs were completed in 2 days. As the CBP continues to surge, hire more frontline CBP agents and officers, acquire new technology, and develop the border wall system, the National Guard is helping us close security gaps, improve our national security. Operation Guardian Support makes our community safer and our country more secure, and I see the impact of these efforts every day. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Chief Carish. The chair now recognizes General Nichols for 5 minutes to testify.
Good afternoon. Chairwoman McSally, Ranking Member Vela, members of the subcommittee. Major General John Nichols, Adjutant General of Texas. Texas National Guard and the Texas Military Department comprises 24,000 Army, Air, civilians, and volunteers working all across the state. We respond to Texas in times of need and also the nation. We help it with border security, helping DPS, helping the Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection. We also help the Texas Department of Emergency Management, fighting fires, and most notably Hurricane Harvey. We also participated in Irma and Maria as Harvey settled, and we could lend our help to our fellow states. General Joe Lengel, the Chief of National Guard Bureau, he's also a Texan. He'll tell you, and I agree with him, that our main mission is the defense of America. We support America's Air Force and America's Army, fighting America's wars. Our ability to train, deploy, and support the warfighter is our #1 role. That's the reason why we exist, and that's why we're funded through federal funding for our existence. Texas National Guard is also always deployed when asked. Since 2001, we've deployed over 30,000 of our 24,000 members. The second mission is to secure the homeland and protect our communities from whatever may hit us, including man-made terrorism, border security, or natural disasters. We fulfill this mission every single day. Currently, we have 2,300 members deployed supporting America overseas. We have members on the border. We have members supporting counter-drug. And we have people fighting fires as we speak. Earlier this year, President Trump authorized, as part of this effort, federal troops up to 4,000 strong National Guard personnel along the border. Governor Abbott committed immediate support of 1,000 troops, and we immediately deployed 250 along the Texas-Mexico border under Operation Guardian Support. That started on April 6th, and we've continued. We're no stranger to the border. We've been in support of state and the nation securing the border for many, many years, and will continue as long as asked to do that mission. We perform a variety of roles, including motor vehicle operations, logistics support, security monitoring, administrative services, which enables the Border Patrol agents to get back on the border where they're most effective. Guardsmen are expertly trained in surveillance, reconnaissance, logistics, aviation, criminal analysis, linguistics, support, and other advanced specialties. So we use our military duties to help support Border Patrol. The Texas National Guard has unique resources and equipment to support our civilian partners, including the UH-72 Lakota with their mission enhancement package, and we're also employing the RC-26 in Texas. We have 11 Lakota helicopters. We're supported by Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Oklahoma, and Florida currently. I'd like to personally thank those partner states for coming to our aid. And we've flown 994 hours so far during border operations. Guardsmen assigned to Operation Guardian Support are activated under Title 32 status. Currently, the 72nd Infantry Brigade Combat Team based out of Houston is in charge of the overall operation for us under the full support and command of Governor Abbott. We deployed, when we deployed, we were sent to the southwest border, and we sent complete units and ready units as opposed to pieces, parts. So we mobilized a battalion that was stationed already in El Paso and a battalion that was stationed in the Rio Grande Valley. We will swap those commands out as time goes on, but we're still supporting floods and fires. As a matter of fact, the unit that was in the Rio Grande Valley came off station and supported Texas citizens during the recent floods we had about 2 weeks ago. Saved many lives and went back to work. Whenever a nation has been threatened by external dangers or suddenly plunged into war, the National Guard has helped to secure and maintain security and safety of the homeland. Our skills and capabilities gained from combat and our civilian careers help us respond to domestic threats such as chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear attacks, even large-scale disasters and the new frontier cyber attacks. The skill sets of Guardsmen are strengthened by these missions. We also bring that skill set to the border when called. That concludes my statement, and I'm ready for any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, General Nichols. The chair now recognizes General McGuire for 5 minutes to testify.
Chairwoman McSally and Ranking Member Vela, members of the subcommittee, thank you so much for this opportunity today. On behalf of Governor Doug Ducey, I'm proud to represent the great state of Arizona and the 7,800 members of the Arizona National Guard. Rather than reading my statement, I've submitted for the record a written statement. I would like to say as an opening remark, a little bit of difference between us and Texas just in terms of size. As John mentioned, he has nearly 24,000 guardsmen. We have just 7,800 Army and Air Guardsmen in the state, currently tasked for 657 of those to support the border, as well as having about 1,000 of our soldiers and airmen currently tasked for overseas missions in Afghanistan and Iraq, so a large percentage of that. Similar to Texas, we're doing all this under the Title 32 authority, and we appreciate the support of Homeland Security and Department of Defense to fund what we believe is a federal mission, and that border security is a national security issue. We are also very, very happy that this is the first of the 3 times that we've done this mission that DHS has incorporated the Joint Task Force concept. So Chief Karish, who we're proudly represents Tucson Sector, is also the JTF West Combined Forces Commander. So I look at our role in the Arizona National Guard as being the supporting command to the supported Joint Task Force Commander. So we simply deliver, in this case, 657 soldiers and airmen based on specific requests for assistance in areas from aviation to security analysts to transportation, engineering, or whatever the support requirements are to allow them to surge badges to the border, and we will continue to do that through 1 October of this year. Significant challenges, as I see going forward, is the end of the fiscal year in terms of funding, how the mission will be handled going into the next fiscal year, and was previously mentioned in your remarks, Chairman McSally. While we are using RC-26 and the Lakota, there are other rotary wing and remotely piloted systems like MQ-9 and Apache that could be used in night low visibility to help support our Customs and Border Patrol agents out of the normal daytime cycle. But beyond that, I stand ready to answer your questions, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thanks, General McGuire. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions. Look, there's a lot of politics. Obviously, we've seen that already today, but as the professionals out in the field there, can each of you just give me a quick, has this been an important deployment, and do you agree that it's a positive thing and it's been a positive impact on border security? I'll get into more detailed questions after that, but Chief Karish?
So I'll start by saying yes. As I've told my colleagues in the past, any assistance that we can get down on that border helps us. I think people seem to look at this as simply an immigration matter, which it's not. You're looking at still a war on terror that we're fighting. You've got guns coming across the border. You've got cash. You've got people. You've got violence down there. So any assistance that we can get is welcome, whether it's at the federal, state, local, or tribal levels. So we need that help on the border. Border is a national security issue that we all have to apply resources to. And I'm grateful for the coordination and effort that has gone on with the Guard in being down there to support us right now.
Great, thanks. Again, I'll get into more details later, but in general, General Nichols, a positive deployment and good for the troops and good for the mission? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
What you said, ma'am. No. It has been very positive for us. I was talking to my colleagues about the initial deployment. We involuntarily mobilized our soldiers. There was a discussion with the governor and I, and that worked out fine. We're coming up on 179 days on mission. We're talking about rotating people out. 75% of them want to stay. The other 25 have jobs they have to get back to, but the rest are so ingrained in the mission now. They've been welcomed by Customs and Border Patrol in every single mission they've been assigned to, and they're working as a team with them. So it's been very positive. They get to practice some of their military skills, and those that they don't get to, we'll pull them off and do some annual training like we do, and then get them right back into the mission without missing a beat.
Great, thanks. General McGuire?
Ma'am, have not received any negative feedback from any of the over 350 Arizona Guardsmen deployed. And I failed to mention in my opening comment, we are receiving support as well from Indiana, Missouri, Wisconsin, Maine, Kentucky, and Iowa as well. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Chief Karish, when we were down at the border with Secretary Nielsen, we could tell from the community down there that they were really looking forward, that the reinforcements had arrived, and, you know, and continuing to have that integration with the support of the National Guard. Although there were some concerns and questions about whether they're being fully utilized in order to free up our agents. So can you share just any perspective on that and any barriers we might be able to remove so that we can fully free up the Border Patrol agents to be at the border?
Guard right now is assisting us on various fronts. On the aviation side, operations, logistics, and administrative support that they're giving us. Critical to the job that they're doing for us right now is operating cameras. They're acting as our eyes and ears, giving us greater situational awareness of that border so that we can see what's coming. But even with things such as vegetation removal in areas down in Nogales where you were at, Guard down there has cleared over 5 acres of vegetation. That makes that area a lot easier now is to monitor for our people. On the aviation side, the surveillance aircraft that they have provided of significant importance to us, but also on the rescue side. As you well know, in Arizona during the summer, we deploy a lot of our resources towards rescuing people who become stranded in the desert. We now have another partner in the National Guard who is supporting us in that endeavor. So many different examples, whether it's in the garage, whether it's analyzing the intelligence reports, we definitely are seeing a lot of great work between us.
Do you see any barriers to, you know, utilizing the Guard to the best capability possible, and anything you need that needs to be improved?
No, I mean, I think under different deployments, they were assigned different duties. I know during Jumpstart, they had entry identification teams where they were deployed. This time, it's different. There's no contact with any of the migrants that are down on the border. So no challenges from my perspective.
Okay, great. I do want to follow up on, thanks for sharing both General Nichols and General McGuire. There's a lot of misconceptions on people thinking, oh, well, our troops we're in a bit of a readiness crisis nationwide. We talk about this all the time, and our troops are basically kind of wasting their time doing border security instead of, you know, honing their skills so that they can defend us should they need to go deploy. And having served myself in uniform, I'm always trying to debunk this, that when you're out there doing real training, when you're fixing real vehicles, when you're doing real intel analysis, this actually increases your skills. You mentioned that already. I think this is a really important message for people to understand. It's not an either or. They're increasing their skills and increasing the mission. And I'm running out of time, but I want to stop there. But maybe on my next time around, I want to hear more about that from both the tags. So thanks. The chair now recognizes Mr. Correa for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, I wanted to, Mr. Kasich, Karish, and Mr. Nichols and Mr. McGuire, can't see too well from here, for your service to our country. I'm out of the state of California. Worked very closely with General Baldwin out of California National Guard. You're the citizen soldier, so to speak, and I think more and more our nation's defense is entrusted to you. So thank you very much for the good work. Mr. Karish, if I may, you've been 30 years with the service. Thank you as well for your service. You mentioned a minute ago that this was an issue not of immigration but terrorism. So let me follow up a quick question. Known or possible terrorists, have we apprehended and countered most of those in the southern border or the northern border?
I think we've seen them on both sides, Congressman, on both borders.
Because testimony here by folks in your department have said we've encountered more of them in the Canadian border than the southern border.
There has been more on the Canadian border, but we also have encountered on the southern border. I don't think we can ever discount the possibility of the location that they're going to choose entry.
But I would say if you're encountering more of them in the northern border, is that an issue we should address, and therefore maybe look at putting the National Guard at the northern border?
Well, I think we would welcome any additional resources that come to the border, as I indicated previously, whether that's federal, state, local, tribal agencies who can help us, because at the end of the day, the border with Canada is much larger, but we also do have a tremendous flow problem on the southwest border.
So we do have a problem in both borders then.
I think it is evident. I think you have drugs, you have guns, you have people from different countries that are flowing across both borders, yes.
Thank you very much. Sir, Secretary Nielsen and Mattis on April 6, 2018, they mentioned some of the effect that they would opt to win the deployment of the National Guard to the U.S.-Mexico border when, I quote, our nation's borders are secure. Any thought what definition of our nation's borders would be secure to win the redeployment of the National Guard?
Congressman Correa, as I indicated before, I think we need to apply every bit and all resources that we have available is to securing our border. Our borders are far from secure. Recently, I had an agent shot down in Arizona patrolling the border. So I think the border is dangerous. I think there still is significant work that needs to be done down there. We have an opioid crisis right now that the country is facing. So I think we all need to look at it from various fronts of the different challenges that we face on the nation, as a nation.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple of minutes left, so very quickly. Follow-up question. General Kelly here, when he was Secretary of Homeland Security, we had a couple of questions and discussion here about what securing the border was all about. And I remember him saying something to the effect, paraphrasing, saying, if something gets to our border, something negative, the battle's lost. You've got to stop those negative elements from even coming close to our border. So the question I would go off to any of you, I would ask is, how are we cooperating with our southern and northern neighbors to make sure that this is a regional secure situation as opposed to just the wall, so to speak?
I'll start off,
Thank you.
Congressman Correa. I will tell you, first of all, work very closely with the government of Mexico. HINAMI, have tremendous relationships with them. I was actually assigned to Mexico City years ago as an attaché for CBP, so I believe in that relationship. Also started a program back in 2013 with the federal police called the Cross-Border Coordination Initiative, where we did joint patrols. I think the people on both sides of the border want the same thing, which is safety, tranquility, and livelihood. So we're working together with our partners in Mexico is to try to do that. But as General Kelly also said, we must continue to extend that border outward so that we prevent people from ever reaching our borders, because then it becomes too late. But the relationship that we have with Mexico and other countries continues to be very strong.
Thank you. Gentlemen, any thoughts?
Congressman, in Arizona, our focus obviously is the southwest border and the sovereign territory of Arizona as a state. And we do have quarterly meetings with Sedena and Samar from the Mexican Army and Navy Marine Corps. We work that through JTF North and U.S. Northern Command, who has the responsibility for, as you mentioned, extending out our security beyond what is our physical border at the state line. But we have a great working relationship with them, and I'd say that has improved significantly over the last 5 years with them, helping us work cross-border intelligence with other agencies, whole of government, through our counter-drug group, Department, DEA, ATF, and other groups on the southern border.
Gentleman's time's expired.
Time's expired. And,
We got to do another round.
okay.
All right,
Thank you,
Chair now
gentlemen.
recognizes Mr. Bacon from Nebraska for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and I appreciate all three of you being here, and thanks for your service. And all of you served roughly 3 decades and more defending our country, and we're grateful. I have a series of quick questions for you, so I ask you to stay somewhat concise. Mr. Karish, I think you've already answered this, but I just want to make sure that we have it clearly. Can you confirm that the mission of the Guard is helping you out? Is it value added for what you're doing?
Tremendous value.
Thank you. Is this considered temporary until Border Patrol gets expanded, or is what's your timeline here for receiving the support?
Sir, all I'm aware of right now is that we're funded, or the Guard is funded through the end of this fiscal year.
Is this designed, though, to fill a niche while you're trying to grow your numbers, or is this more of an indefinite type of support?
I think this is definitely ongoing support, which we've seen in the past from the Guard to CBP.
Now, I'd be inclined to try to expand your numbers so that you can fulfill this mission, on your own, just for my own 2 cents worth, are the authorities clear between y'all? Is there confusion where the lines are drawn when it comes to defending the border?
Not from my perspective, no.
How about your all's perspectives? Pretty clear authorities?
Yes, sir, we're supporting Border Patrol, and it's coordinated through DOD, DHS, National Guard Bureau, and then the local border chiefs when we get down there and work for them. So our roles and missions are clearly defined.
Also, to piggyback on what the chairwoman already asked to our two Guard leaders here, can you also reconfirm that you feel like your missions are value added, that you are contributing to this mission?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, have had no negative feedback from any of the Arizona Guardsmen that are deployed.
And I think I have a very similar question. I'm going to give you a chance to delve into this more because we have the same question here. Is this undermining any of your other missions for training or for rotating to the Middle East? Do you see any, is there any con to this to the other missions you have, or any, opposing? Is there anything cutting against it?
On the readiness front, what I would say is that unlike when General Nichols mentioned that they had deployed entire units in the initial deployment in Arizona, we took individual augmentees based on the requirements levied in the request for assistance. Those soldiers and airmen are required to drill 1 weekend a month and do their annual training. We're going through the annual training season right now. So the only pressure that I would say that would come upon this is that soldier airman's primary mission is to their war-traced unit of assignment. If that mission were tasked and they were forward deployed, then we would have to backfill that soldier airman on the border. But the best way to think about it is a citizen soldier, they're doing this Monday through Friday and drilling on the weekend, and we have enough depth that we can cover that vacancy on the weekend. So no different than if they were working somewhere else.
Thank you, General Nichols.
Yes, sir. To add to that, it's not just Texas. It's not the 4 border states. It's the entire National Guard. So,
good point.
In the 450,000 personnel realm, we've taken into account those that are deploying, those that have deployed or en route. Some of the training that has to be done. We still have enough National Guard members to do this, and also to, if there's any readiness impact, to spread it out and lessen it every place that we can.
Okay. I don't know what your missions are right now in the Middle East, but there's no negative impact on any of the rotations you're doing with Iraq or Afghanistan?
No, sir, none at all.
Okay, General McGuire?
Nope. As I mentioned, we have nearly 1/5 of the Arizona Guard is going to be tasked in the
Right.
next year for sourcing, which is the reason we're going to have to go out to so many other states to support this 600 to 700 man and woman deployment.
Okay, thank you very much. And one last question for Mr. Karish. There's a lot of talk about ICE, the abolishment of ICE. A little bit unrelated, but I just want to get your impact. If ICE was abolished, how would that impact your mission?
There'd be no effective immigration and enforcement in the interior of the country, which if you have a law that's in the books, it needs to be enforced, whether it's at the border or in the interior.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairwoman, I yield back.
All right, gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Ms. Demings from Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you to all of you for being with us today, and thank you for the service that you provide. You know, I think, and I believe my colleagues would agree, that our primary responsibility as members of Congress is to make sure that we are, number one, keeping our nation safe, but also utilizing our resources, very limited resources and personnel, in the most effective manner possible. During the 9/11 attacks, I was assigned to the Orlando International Airport as a police commander. And I remember then Governor Jeb Bush deployed the National Guard to come out and assist local and state law enforcement officers with securing the perimeter, patrolling the airport. We had thousands of passengers who were stranded there, as you know, not just in Orlando, but all over the country. And the National Guard played a critical role in helping to get aviation security back up to where it needed to be, and we appreciated that. That was a critical role. The mission was clear. And so we're trying to make sure that you're being utilized in the most effective way and not being political, because I questioned the initial deployment, whether it was actually political or not. Major or General Nichols, you indicated that you have over 2,000, I believe, National Guard personnel deployed overseas. Could you talk about some of the duties that are assigned to them in that capacity?
Yes, ma'am. We're on the Horn of Africa right now, which is a nation-building, capacity-building mission, assisting the different nations surrounding the Horn. We're in MFO Ops, which is observation on the Sinai, enforcing the treaty between Israel and, not enforcing, but making sure it stays intact. We're in Afghanistan. We're in Kuwait/Iraq. We're sending a helicopter company very shortly, and then we're on the hook in a year and a half or so to send our attack battalion, Apaches. And then every year, we just continue. It's one of the, I tell folks that the sun doesn't set on Texas, on a Texan, because we've got a Texan in every region of the world supporting America.
Yeah, thank you. Chief Karish, you talked about some of your duties involve aviation support, operating cameras, and clearing vegetation. What else are they involved in?
Repairing.
Because we've heard all kinds of
Yes, ma'am.
stories, and we want to make sure that those stories are not accurate.
Yes, ma'am. Repairing tactical infrastructure, road improvements that are down there, intelligence analysis that they're doing. So I think they're doing a lot of different good support roles for us right now, working in dispatch centers, but specifically the camera rooms. That's where we probably have the greatest concentration of Guard personnel right now.
And what percentage of the ones assigned to you would you say are actually involved in the operating the camera mission?
Vast majority, I don't have a percentage right at the top of my head, which we could definitely get back to you on, but the vast majority, I think the two areas right now that consume largest deployment of personnel is going to be the aviation piece and then also the surveillance.
And they are not engaged in ride-alongs, is that
No,
correct?
no.
And they have no contact at all with any of the families?
None whatsoever, ma'am.
Okay, and very, very quickly with my last minute that I have left, you've heard about I think the fiasco actually with families being separated. I know under the zero tolerance policy that this has just been I would say an additional burden on already limited resources. Have you been involved at all in any of the process that's being developed to reunite families, children that are separated from their parents?
That is a issue with DHS or with ICE and HHS. They're the ones who are actually handling the reunification.
Do you play
of
any
families.
role at all
ma'am.
in that process? You are no one at the border.
Right. I actually handle the enforcement at the border, but not handling the reunification right now.
Okay, thank you all again. I yield back.
Melody yields back. The chair now recognizes Mr. Hurd from Texas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Chief Carrick, it's great to see you. I think they're working you a little harder in Arizona than Texas. I think you've lost some weight since I've last seen you. Looking good, sir. And General Nichols, it's always a pleasure to have you, and thank you for educating me in some of the training operations that's going on in San Antonio. And General McGuire, it's a pleasure to have you here. For my friends from the National Guard, the y'all's ISR capabilities, have we deployed as much as we could along the border? Is this another training opportunity where your men and women in the Guard are able to, not only help Border Patrol with ISR, but that the men and women get that training opportunities when they do it overseas?
We initially started with the Lakotas. They have the Mission Enhancement Package, which is a very handy and very effective platform. We're sending in the RC-26s now. I think there will be a time in the future for Reapers to be flying. I know that California has mentioned that. I think Arizona as well. So we see that as a possible in the future. We're not volunteering that. We're letting DOD and DHS do their talk to make sure they get the mission they want, but they know the capabilities that we can provide.
Good copy.
Yes, sir. you're correct that we're not fully deploying all of our capabilities. In my opening statement, I did mention that there are capabilities like the launch and recovery element at Fort Huachuca, where we operate MQ-9s, where we could help increase capacity of both CBP, MQ-9s, and our own Guard assets that are stay-at-home training assets and position them on the border. To date, we have not yet gotten a request for assistance through DHS and DOD for that. The most recent change was the addition of the RC-26. So Texas and Arizona will be deploying their RC-26, a manned platform, but we could do more in the unmanned systems area.
Is there also, because of the number of weeks that y'all are there, do you see opportunities that if y'all were able to grow what you were able to do, that it would be increased training opportunities for the men and women in the Guard?
On the unmanned aerial systems, definitely. We've looked at working with CBP to do additional launch and recovery operations, which is limited by the number of aircraft we have, since so many DoD assets are deployed forward into theater, either in CENTCOM or PACAF theater or PACOM theaters. We have just a couple aircraft. If we could utilize those aircraft, we could train more crews, definitely.
General Nichols, any opinion?
I agree with General McGuire. We could, that can be expanded.
Gotcha. And Chief Karich, you talked about it earlier, the fentanyl issue. Correct me if I'm wrong, 0.2 grams of heroin could kill somebody. 0.002 grams of fentanyl can kill somebody. 11 kilograms can ultimately kill 3 million people. The ability to move that, you don't have to do it in bulk. Are your officers, are they getting the training they need and how to deal with such a toxic substance?
We've definitely conducted training, Congressman Hurd, but additional training is required. I mean, in our dialogue right now, even with the Mexicans, with our law enforcement agencies, we've started to talk about this. Many times they're going to see that even before we do. So we've got to do everything we can is to share information with each other, as toxic as it can be, is to make sure that we're protecting our frontline personnel who are coming into harm's way. We've changed the way we transport, the way we test, so every bit of information that we can get that's going to make it safer for us is to handle it is going to be better.
Yeah, and this is something not only you, but your fellow local law enforcement colleagues are going to need that same training, first responders, because, again, you brush your hand against something like this and it could have significant long-term effects. If I had additional time, I'd like to ask about, being able to do long-term operations. So if you find someone in Tucson sector that's going, are we using that information to understand the halfway houses before drugs are being shipped to Chicago or Houston, and the interplay between various law enforcement? This is an area that we're spending time with, and you've always been helpful in educating me, so I look forward to that conversation in the near future. Ms. Chairwoman, I yield back the time I do not have.
Chairman yields back his lack of time. Chair now recognizes Mr. Richmond from Louisiana for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And I guess I'll pick up where Congressman Hurd left off and talk about, first, before I go there, let me just ask, was there overall, did you make a request for, or do you know if there was a request made for National Guard to support the border mission?
We did not, sir.
You did? Okay. Do you know of any agency that actually made a request for the National Guard to assist in patrolling or securing the border?
I believe the President directed both DOD and DHS is to work together in conjunction with the state governors, is to deploy the Guard down at the border.
Right, but there was no request from any agency that actually patrols the border?
Correct.
Do you know if there was a long-term strategy put in place beforehand so that, and I guess any of you all are in a position to answer, what does mission accomplished look like? Or has that been articulated, what mission accomplished look like? Do we know? Okay. Now I'll pick up where Mr. Hurd left off, which is, Mr. Carriage, I think that you talked a little bit about drugs coming over, terrorism and other things. Do you believe that with personnel only and I guess maybe some border fencing, that we can secure the border 100% with just that?
I think you're going to need a combination, Congressman, of the personnel, the tactical infrastructure that comes with it, the access, the roads, the technology, but also what you're going to need is you're going to need consequence. And what I mean by that is the prosecution, because you are in fact deterring. So I think all of these things coming together is what is going to help us effectively control the border.
Now, besides people that are coming over and to do harm, and I'll include terrorism, trafficking drugs, trafficking people, whatever, all of those are to do harm. But you also see people that are coming across in search of better opportunity or safety for their families. In that, do we, that you know of, do we put a lot of effort into, because I would assume that those drugs that are coming across the border, those humans that are being trafficked, the law of supply and demand tells me that if they're coming across the border to the United States, it means somebody in the United States buying those drugs, buying the people that are being trafficked. So we are creating demand for this contraband, whether it's drugs or people or anything else. That's what we're doing as a country, is creating the demand. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I mean, I've always said is that the insatiable appetite for drugs here is what fuels all of the narcotics coming across the border.
And it's that narcotics production and the money associated with it that is making some of these homelands so violent with cartels and everyone else, so that some of the well-intentioned people coming across the border, whatever number that may be, they're in search of a safer place, better place, but we are, as a country, contributing to the chaos in their respective homelands to some extent. Would you agree with that?
Well, I wouldn't say is that the United States is sole. I think drugs head into various parts of the world. You have violence in various parts of the world that drive these people is on this journey, but various causes of what drives individuals has come to the United States.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we're the sole cause.
No,
I wouldn't say
right.
we're the major factor, but I would say we are a factor. Would you agree with us being a factor?
Well, I think, yes, I mean, you can say that it is a factor, but it's one of many, because there's many different reasons of why people decide to come to the United States.
I agree. Look, let me just say this, and especially to our National Guard people. I represent New Orleans, all the way up to Baton Rouge. We're the home of many natural disasters, and I would just take the chance to thank you all, National Guard all across the country. You all respond in moments' notice to hurricanes, to tornadoes, and everything else. And no matter what particular issue we're on, the sacrifice that your men and women make, from the Guard to law enforcement, is what makes this country special. So thank you all for what you do, and I appreciate your time and being here.
Gentleman kneels back. I'm going to do a second round. You all right with that? All right, great. Thanks. And I recognize myself. I want to follow up, Chief Karish. I know it's not in your full jurisdiction, but I think it's important for everybody to understand that the Guard supporting Border Patrol in between the ports of entry, but also at the ports of entry are CBP officers. And I found out yesterday from Sheriff Daniels, also now supporting the Sheriff's Office down in Cochise County. We're all in this together, right, in an integrated way. Can you share some information on how they're supporting at the ports of entry and with local law enforcement?
Yes, the Guard personnel down at the ports of entry are supporting in running the non-intrusive inspection devices, X-raying vehicles, X-raying freight that's coming to the United States. Freeing up also officers at the port of entry is to do other duties. I think in my discussion with General McGuire early on and also with Governor Ducey, we wanted to provide support also to state, local agencies out there that need it. So that is why Sheriff Daniels in Cochise County actually has personnel assigned there, because this is not simply about CBP or DHS. It's that community at large that can benefit from the assistance of the Guard.
Great, thanks. And I also want to follow up on General McGuire and Major General Nichols. You talked about how there's a potential to do more air support. As a pilot myself, I know it's always better to do real missions than to be trying to create, training opportunities. So that, I think, is a tremendous training opportunity. What's the process that we would go through to increase the capacity in these other areas, like the LREs or other assets? Is that just happening sort of collaboratively, or does CBP have to make a request to you, or how does that all work?
To access the training assets that are at Fort Huachuca at the launch and recovery element, it would need to just come down like any of the other mission assignment requests. So if JTF West makes that request up to DHS headquarters, and that comes back down through DOD as a validated mission, we would source the crews to launch the additional LREs and use those on the border to support them for queuing, just as we are with the RC-26 and the MEPS package on the Lakota.
Got it. And are there conversations going on about that potential request right now?
We have been asking for that, and the problem with MQ-9s is always the confusion about, we're not asking to pull people back from theater. We're trying to use assets that we presently use for training with our folks there to keep their in-garrison training requirements up at Fort Huachuca. But we could put them on a mission on the border, just like we're going to do with the RC-26.
Okay, great, thank you. Chief Karish, can you quantify the number of apprehensions? I know it's a little bit in your testimony, but number of apprehensions, amount of drugs apprehended because of the National Guard deployment in support of this mission?
Approximately 11,000 pounds of marijuana. There has also been cocaine, heroin, that we are giving them credit for in the seizure. And also on the apprehension side, over 11,000 apprehensions as well. These are the Guard personnel who are either operating aircraft and are making personal observations or working camera rooms. There was a Raven aircraft unit from the Guard that was flying recently in Tucson, observed 6 individuals with burlap backpack directed agents in. Our agents were able to seize 284 pounds of marijuana and arrest all 6 individuals. So that speaks to that level of cooperation and different capability that they bring to us.
Great, thanks. General McGuire, I want to go back to the how this can maybe enhance the training of some of the Guards men and women in their skill sets. Do you have some examples, maybe just anecdotes of, where if they weren't doing this mission, maybe they'd be doing some in-garrison training or, computerized training, but, now they're actually doing a real mission and how that's enhanced their skills?
So we have taken a number of our folks from our engineering battalion to work down on the border, operating heavy equipment, same type of heavy equipment they would operate in their primary mission. Chief Karish already mentioned we did deploy a number of folks from our maintenance company down to the unit, and they're doing wheeled vehicle maintenance, and so having more vehicles to work on makes more capable mechanics, so we have a whole bunch of them working there, helping save costs. And then obviously on the aviation front, as you mentioned, the pilots get great opportunity operating the sensor package in night and low visibility, doing real missions as opposed to out at the Goldwater Range.
That's great. General Nichols, do you have examples to add?
We have the same experiences. Our Lakota pilots nationwide that are coming to support us are getting real-world training. It's on the spot. It's not the same kind of training you can get at home at all, so it's better training than they could do at home. We're supporting, again, in the maintenance of vehicles, so our folks get to practice their trades. We've had some saves, like the Chief said, where we're helping Border Patrol save money, turn their vehicles quicker, which keeps the agents out on the border. Instead of teaming up a couple in a vehicle, we can get enough vehicles for them to have their own. It makes them more effective when they get out there. And then our intelligence analysts folks are taking law enforcement data and helping form up packages, mission packages for them to go act on.
Oh, that's great. It's real-time intel analysis, right? Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, I'm over my time. Chair now recognizes Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Chief Karish. Tucson area, Tucson sector, I know you had CBP has had a lot of difficulty, some difficulty in retaining personnel in that area. How can we help you? What can we do to help you retain experienced personnel in your area? And I say this in the context that we have some fine National Guardsmen here. Last time I called General Baldwin, he returned my phone call from Eastern Europe, and it reminded me the National Guardsmen now are making up more and more of our regular troops around the world. I've got constituents that are on their 4th tour in Afghanistan and the Middle East. So you're there, but we know you're also halfway around the world. And by the way, the sun doesn't set on Californians either. So, sir, how can we help you, get up to, those ranks that you need to do your job?
Well, first of all, Congressman, I appreciate you helped the Border Patrol already last year. Congress did with the funding for mobility, which is key to our organization. Vast majority of people that leave the Border Patrol right now for other federal agencies are going somewhere because of location. So having a good mobility program, which requires money is to move people around every so often, is key to what we're going to need as an organization is to retain. It's the retention type incentives that I think can offer the workforce is to make sure is that they feel appreciated and valued is to stay in an organization. But definitely the piece that we've got to fix is it's the mobility piece, which is going to require additional funding.
Thank you. Mr. Bacon, I believe, was talking a while ago about abolishing ICE. And I would like to say as an individual, I can't speak for any of my colleagues here, but that's not my preferred action. I think you all do anti-terrorism, you do anti-piracy, you do drug interdiction, human trafficking. And I have to tell you, probably the one issue that is really striking that causes a lot of issues is the zero-tolerance policy. I know Secretary Nielsen saw her one Sunday night on TV. She said our policy is not family separations. Within probably 10 hours, Monday morning, she was on TV saying our policy is zero tolerance. So I can't imagine what your agency is going through trying to figure out what the policy is of this country, what your job is. And I think the zero tolerance is what's really causing folks a lot of angst, a lot of challenges, just because it is a very difficult issue. Children, parents, and I'm telling you this because I want you to know that I appreciate the job you're doing. And I think most of my colleagues appreciate the job you're doing, and we are thankful for it. But this zero tolerance issue is what's driving people crazy, so to speak, really emotional. I have with me here, and I'm going to ask the chair to give me the opportunity to submit this for the record, a statement from governors, about 10 governors that have essentially declined to send their troops to the border, and the major reason they cite is family separation. And this is the one issue that's causing a lot of Americans a lot of anxiety. So I just wanted to make sure I told you so you can understand that I personally appreciate the job you do. Mexico is California's biggest trading partner. Drug issues are big issues in my district, like they are around the country. We want to fix them, and we want to make sure that America is a great place for all Americans to live. And so, again, I just wanted to thank you for the good job you do. And finally, I was noticing you, serious note here. You said you seized about 11,000 pounds of marijuana.
The National Guard, yes.
The National Guard. Yeah. And, my policy question is now that cannabis is fully legal in California, and cannabis is probably legal one way or another in more than 50%, population in this country, more than 50% of the population lives under a jurisdiction where cannabis is legal. I'm just trying to figure out how we address that when it comes to your job.
And sir, in Arizona, my agents have seized actually 125,000 pounds of marijuana
Coming or going?
coming into the United States. So the issue is we've had a 65% reduction in the amount of marijuana that comes across the borders for various reasons. Medical marijuana, recreational laws passed in the United States, but still a sizable amount of that contraband coming in. But notwithstanding, I think also that the criminal organizations are going to change their business model at some point in time, and we're starting to see evidence of that, of them reverting more to the hard drugs, because that's going to be the future. We've had spikes in methamphetamine seizures, cocaine is coming back up, heroin, and of course the big fear is the fentanyl issues with the opioids coming across the border. So I think there's a lot of work that we all have to do together. And that's why I say I really welcome their support, because if they can give me greater situational awareness, if they can do some of the jobs that won't tie my people into camera rooms, that frees us up is to make that interdiction.
And in conclusion, Madam Chair, I just want to say, look forward to working with you. Make sure you're successful in stopping those kinds of hard drugs and other paraphernalia coming into the U.S. Thank you very much, sir.
Gentleman kneels back. If you don't mind divulging, I have one more last quick question. Is that all right? So I just want to ask you, Chief Karish, I'm really remain concerned about the retention issues, both within Border Patrol and our CBP officers. And some of the elements, I mean, we've seen this in the military too, when you're undermanned and the mission is intense and there's no relief in sight, or you start doing more and more things outside your core competency, you can find this sort of spiraling down in retention, right? Because things keep getting worse, and then more people leave, and then things get worse. In any way, are you seeing any shift with morale and retention specifically related to the National Guard deployment, so that there's a little bit of a pressure relief that could maybe start us going in a better direction?
Well, first of all, I've had the opportunities to talk to the guardsmen that are in Tucson, actually in trying to recruit. I think that that's going to be a valuable tool for CBP and the Border Patrol throughout, is to try to recruit. And not only for them, but to also reach out to family members, because they're going back to their locations. I think this is going to be a good opportunity for us, is to do it. Yes, we've got some efficiencies that we've got to do in our hiring, is to get the additional people on board. And key to that is also making sure that we retain the officers and agents that we have, because oftentimes we can't offer a lot of the locations maybe that other federal agencies, and I'm talking about living cities to live in, but we can make up with that also in some type of incentive, is to make sure that the employee feels valued, feels appreciated, that he's given time in a certain area.
But are you seeing with the Guard deployment that just a little bit of the pressure relief of the undermanned demands and people being able to be more in their core competency instead of vehicle maintenance or camera or whatever, I know you probably haven't measured it.
No, we haven't. I mean, but based on the conversations that I've had with our workforce, it's been very positive. Okay. I believe the last statistics that I heard this year also is that our hiring will actually eclipse our attrition this year, which is going to be helpful. So every little bit that we can do is going to continue to help us on that front.
Fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me divulge there. I want to thank the witnesses for all your valuable testimony and all your service, and the members for their questions. The members of the committee may have some additional questions for you. We'll ask you to respond to these in writing. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7E, the hearing record will be held open for 10 days, and without objection, the committee stands adjourned.